Sometimes you dedicate your career to trying to solve the theories of Five Nights at Freddy's, and then somebody just sends you an email that's a better idea than you've had in a while. For anyone who doesn't know, the other half of the major content on this channel is my weekly Five Nights at Freddy's podcast, and I take questions and theories via email and Spotify for that podcast. And somebody sent me an email about the identity of Old Man Consequences, and I brought it out because I liked it and wanted to talk about it. But the more I think about their idea, the more I like it, and the more connections start popping up in researching it. I think I've been wrong about the identity of Old Man Consequences in FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night. So today we're going to rectify that. Slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. So first of all, who the hell is Old Man Consequences? Well, he's this weird-looking sprite in the redwoods at the bottom of FNAF World and in an Ultimate Custom Night Easter egg. Let's break that down a bit. Here's the sprite. It definitely looks like he's fishing, and he says as much, and it also seems like he has this long, toothy jaw, leading many people to believe he's some kind of crocodile character. He also appears to be sitting on something. The woods he appears in shows up in FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night like I previously mentioned. In Ultimate Custom Night, you can get there by only turning on Old Man Consequences and then completing his minigame, to which you're transported there and you get some strange Easter eggs. For one, there's background audio that, if slowed down, sound like someone screaming Mike and Henry and help me, which seems like it's probably William screaming in agony. But if you go to this Old Man Consequences, he tells you to leave the demons with his demons and it's better just to rest here, and then the game will end. However, with Ultimate Custom Night specifically, there's a major question we need to ask. Is this real? Like, does this actually exist? After all, Ultimate Custom Night is almost certainly the creation of the Vengeful Spirit using the memories of William Afton and the Vengeful Spirit itself. So much of Ultimate Custom Night isn't actually real, but instead a mental prison. So is this an extension of that? Or is this actually Old Man Consequences Woods? Well, it's notable that Old Man Consequences in this scene is imploring the Vengeful Spirit to stop what they're doing. Every other creation in Ultimate Custom Night is just existing to punish William Afton, and that's it. This is the only thing that is speaking to the Vengeful Spirit, telling them to chill out. This leads me to believe that this isn't created by the Vengeful Spirit, but rather something that was stumbled upon while doing Ultimate Custom Night. However, of course, this is the second appearance of Old Man Consequences, and a reference to the first, as the first appearance happens in FNAF World. Throughout the game, you can enter these glitchy subtunnels to go down a layer to get through impossible objects. However, you're warned by Fredbear in the game to not go too deep because you might not make it back. And of course, later in the game, you're able to do exactly that. Go 3 layers deep and then 1 more layer down. And doing so lands you in Old Man Consequences Woods. And in this location, there's 2 endings for the game. One of them, you simply speak to Old Man Consequences. And when you do, he tells you,
"I'm sorry to say that you have gone too deep into the code. There is no way back out. My name is Old Man Consequences. Come have a seat, and let's fish for a while. You have nowhere else to go."
However, there's another ending, one that actually makes Old Man Consequences out to be a liar. He tells you that there's nowhere else to go, but you can actually force Fredbear into the lake itself, and then you seemingly fall for a very long time, until eventually seeing this scene. And in doing this, you get the drowning ending. Notably, you can do the same thing in Ultimate Custom Night, but doing so crashes the game, and unlocks the ending in FNAF World if you have both games on your computer and haven't gotten that achievement yet on the other game. Part of me wonders if this is further evidence that the Vengeful Spirit is the spirit inside Golden Freddy, because if Golden Freddy drowns and then the game just crashes, I don't know, this is worth mentioning. So these are the only appearances of the actual character of Old Man Consequences. However, there's heavy speculation that that character is still relevant in modern FNAF as the old man in Princess Quest. Now, like I said, this is just a theory, but let's break down this speculation. First of all, they use a very similar shade of color, and it's not exactly a common one. Salmon characters, or whatever this pinkish reddish shade is, are very striking and seemingly specific. They also share a similar role, As we'll see, the old man in Princess Quest, once you've completed your quest, tells you that it's time to sleep, and every time we see Old Man Consequences, he tells us, well, it's time to rest. So, I mean, you know. But what specifically does the old man in Princess Quest do? Well, in the first and third Princess Quest games, he doesn't appear at all. But in the second Princess Quest game, he begins and ends it. The second Princess Quest game starts with us waking up in a cave after being attacked by that rabbit monstrosity, to which the old man says,
"You are alive. That is good. Take the sword of light and go."
And then he gives us that sword of light to protect ourselves and fend off the rabbit creatures. By the end of that game, we get a normal looking room with a glitchy door on the end, and once again that old man, who now says,
"Congratulations. Your quest is done. Time to sleep."
Again, this isn't a full truth. Our quest maybe just was to survive, but we can continue onwards, and doing so puts us into a help wanted looking area, the beginning of Princess Quest 3. Now, that's the only appearance of the old man in Security Breach and Ruin inside those cavern levels of Princess Quest 2. But in Help Wanted 2, we get to play Princess Quest 4, and we meet the old man again, but this time his English is much worse. He greets us at the beginning of the game and says,
"You are one, and you remain. What is left that is hidden? Now go to next room."
And instead, this time we're left a dark purple sword, not the sword of light. Then at the end of the game, once we're inside the game itself and at its deepest depth, we once again meet him, to which we give him the Vanny mask and he says,
"It is a fair trade,"
giving us the Glitch Trap plushie. All of this is incredibly notable and incredibly strange, but it leaves the question, is the old man Consequences? Well, yes and no. I think there's enough evidence for me to confidently believe the theory that the Princess Quest 2 old man is Old Man Consequences. After all, like I've said, visually and thematically they're very similar, urging the player to rest when the job is done. And not to mention location. Princess Quest 2 is the only game in Security Breach where we see the old man, and specifically he appears in a cave area, caves that look a lot like the ones we see in Ruin. Old Man Consequences only appears in FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night, both things that I believe take place after the fire from the Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator in FNAF 6. This location would be the building we find in these caves. So if Old Man is in the caves, so is Old Man Consequences, literally in caves. So it's a nice parallel there, if not a specific example. The old man in Princess Quest is in caves with blue mushrooms, and the location where I believe Old Man Consequences is, in the or at least where FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night are, is also in a cave with blue mushrooms. Not to mention all the other similarities between FNAF World and Ruin. But you'd better watch my podcast episodes with the Oof Troop on that. I'll link them in the card right here. After all, most of the ideas connecting FNAF World to other parts of the FNAF timeline come from the Oof Troop. They have a lot of good insight on FNAF World and connective tissue there. So that's all well and good, but then why did I say yes and no? Well, this video actually features 2 emails sent into the podcast. This email isn't the main one that today's video is mostly about, but recently I also received an email about Princess Quest 4 that I brought up on the podcast. This was from Kim, who wrote, "Is it possible that Princess Quest 4's old man is nothing more than repurposed code? Like, is the old man actually AI mimic?" And thinking about this, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, it got me thinking a lot about what J-Top had to say. Oh, okay. God damn, dude. That's just from this recording session. I've been recording for 15 minutes. But it got me thinking about what J-Top from Steel Wool said about the broken English in the FNAF interview.
The old man, I'll just call him the old man.
Yeah.
At the beginning, his dialogue has some grammatical errors.
Yes.
Is that on purpose?
Yes.
Is it more of an inside
exactly
joke?
What I wanted to say.
Interesting.
Saying exactly the wording that I wanted to use.
Interesting.
You know, some of that goes back to what era are certain things from.
And sure, he goes on to say how some of it was inspired by the games of that era, the retro games that were poorly translated. But he specifically said that some of it comes from that era, which would mean there's other reasons for it. And this would be an excellent reason. After all, when we see the old man in Princess Quest 2, he doesn't have this grammatically incorrect broken English, only has it in Princess Quest 4. This could be because the old man from Princess Quest 4 is just repurposed code. They spliced together sentences from previous instances of the old man character from Princess Quest. It's not that he says, "What is left that is hidden," but they took separate sentences to stitch them together to closely resemble what they're trying to say. Now, whether that's the Mimic's doing or Vanny is hard to tell. My final verdict on this, I think it's incredibly likely that the old man from Princess Quest 2 is Old Man Consequences. However, I think it's equally likely that the old man from Princess Quest 4 is a fake old man created by either the Mimic or Vanny as bait for the trap. Alright, so that's everything we know about Old Man Consequences. So who the hell is he? Well, the most common theory, and one that I purported to believe for a long time until now, was Henry. Most of the time when discussions of Old Man Consequences came up, most people assumed it was either a weird metaphor for God, some kind of Easter egg, or Henry Emily, co-creator of Fazbear Entertainment and the guy who created FNAF 6 to destroy everything and finally kill William Afton. And for the most part, this thinking comes from the fact that Henry just fits the bill for this character. He is an old man, and he very clearly wants everything to end. So an old man in the afterlife asking everybody to chill out makes a lot of sense. And most people, myself included, kind of just left it there. It fits nicely and cleanly, and there's no further reason to look into it for now. But then I got an email for the podcast from Robin that I did go on to bring up on the podcast, and they said, "I noticed a similarity between the Midnight Motorist Woods and the Old Man Consequences Woods. This led me to speculate, what if Old Man Consequences was Mike? Mike Consequences, my consequences, sounds like the kind of pun Scott would make. A young man's actions, crying child getting bit, would equal an old man's consequences." And then they go on later to say, "Foxy's his favorite, Foxy's a pirate, and Old Man Consequences is fishing, shrug." Sorry for all the dramatic changes. My center light, I don't know if it was picking up on the video, but it's been like flickering the whole time and I'm going crazy. So I turned it off, but when I turned it off, now I only have the side lights. And the microphone was here and casted this shadow, so I had to put it down. And now I don't know if the microphone is gonna sound good here. I just wanna finish this recording. Can you believe this shit, Percy Poodle from Playtime with Percy? But when I brought up that email on the podcast, I kind of just mentioned how much I liked the theory and moved on. But the more I think about it, the more evidence starts popping up in my head, and the more I like it. In fact, with the evidence that I've uncovered looking into this, I think I just believe it more than Henry. So, is Old Man Consequences Michael Afton? Well, to start, he does fit the same role as Henry. By the time of FNAF 6, he's also an old man. Granted, he's younger than Henry, probably somewhere around 50 to 70 years old, depending on the timeline, but he's definitely aged, especially with what he's gone through. Like, sure, some people are pretty spry and young at the age of 50, but consider this guy died somewhere in the 80s or 90s and then spent decades dead looking for his father. He's been through a lot. At this point, he is decrepit and ready to die. Henry thinks so, and Michael seems to act as though. And now that William is seemingly dead, Michael would probably also want everything to end. They're both ready for this to all be over. That's probably why he steps in with Ultimate Custom Night. He sees the vengeful spirit and what they're doing and knows that anger and revenge seeking, and tries to reach out to say, hey, this isn't worth it. William was beaten, just let him be and rest. So what evidence do we have for this? Well, in the email, they mentioned that Foxy was Michael's favorite, and Foxy's a pirate, and Old Man Consequences is fishing, and there is a loose connection there. But that Foxy point brings up a much stronger connection too. We've never had an explanation for this strange sprite. Many people just think it's a cool crocodile character that's yet to be fully shown. But you know what it does look like? A long snout filled with teeth, just like a side profile of Foxy. After all, look at the sprite for Foxy Go Go Go. They're not one-to-one, but these games are years apart, and they're pretty close, all things considered. Who in this franchise do we know not only liked Foxy a lot, but wore a Foxy mask? Michael Afton. This sprite could be Michael wearing a Foxy mask, perhaps to cover up what happened to him after the scooping incident. Even more than that, in the email they mentioned the Midnight Motorist Woods looking very similar to the Old Man Consequences Woods. But but it goes deeper than just visual similarity. For the sake of this theory, let's assume that Midnight Motorist is about the Afton household, and that the house that we see in this game is the FNAF 4 house. If that's the case, then we don't even need to rely on the fact that these pixel art forests look similar. In the Help Wanted Curse of Dreadbear DLC, we get to be at Fall Fest of 1983, and looking in our area, we're in a clearing in the woods, and in the distance, we see the FNAF 4 house on the hills, just like the main menu of FNAF 4. Because of this, many people, myself included, believe that the clearing in the woods in Midnight Motorist is where Fall Fest used to take place. This would imply that Fall Fest took place nearby the FNAF 4 house. And this is notable because there's one other major feature of the Curse of Dreadbear lobby, a giant lake with a pier perfect for fishing that's well lit for the night. This would further connect the Old Man Consequences woods with the Midnight Motorist woods around the FNAF 4 house, giving us really solid evidence that there was a giant lake in the woods near the FNAF 4 house, Michael's childhood home. It seems like his restful afterlife is fishing at his favorite fishing spot where he used to all the time. Even more so, if Michael was the runaway in Midnight Motorist, this could be that place that he's run off to again. It could be that he used to always sneak out and go fishing by this lake, but ever since the crying child's death, he visits his unmarked grave and just sits by the lake. And in death, he does the same, resting where the crying child was and fishing at his favorite lake. Not to mention, if FNAF 6 takes place at Fredbear's, which is what turns into Junior's during Midnight Motorist, then the sinkhole created from FNAF 6 could have led runoff from that lake to form the very same underground lake we see next to the building in ruin. This lake is important, and I think Fall Fest might be the game to tell us that. Just hope we get one. There's one more connection here as well. In FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night, you can force the Fredbear sprite into the lake to get a drowning ending. So it's notable that in Help Wanted, Dreadbear emerges from that very same lake, a twisted and dark reflection of Fredbear. That's got to mean something, and I've got my ideas on it, but that's too much for today's video. But what do you think? Did I convince you? Because I've convinced myself at this point. I didn't even think about this possibility until Robin emailed me. Also, Robin's a rapper, just released a new album, go check it out, link in the card. But the more I think about it, the more I really like it, especially with the theory that a lot of people believe that Michael Afton is possessing Glamrock Freddy. I've never liked that, but part of that theory is the logic that after the death of the crying child, Michael feels obligated to protect children to make up for that mistake. That logic lines up perfectly with this theory, the idea that as Old Man Consequences, Michael, with that guilt in him, wants other people to rest and find peace. In the meantime, however, if you want more shop chopped about FNAF World and just theories about it, this week's podcast episode actually, again, featured the Oof Troop and was all about FNAF World, so you can see that right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #RideTart. A huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.